Peace, family. I want to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I read a book a couple of years ago by a civil rights attorney by the name of Michelle Alexander. And the book is called The New Jim Crow. And in this book, she talks about how the Jim Crow system has morphed into what we now see it as mass incarceration. And when Jim Crow and discrimination against black people or people, period, were outlawed, then the government and white society came up with a whole new way in order to control a group of people. And what they found is that this whole population control stemmed from the war on drugs. Now, Jim Crow was a set of rules and laws and customs after slavery in order to control the slave population. They were, once they were freed, now what do? How do you control the people that you once controlled? So they created these legalized discriminatory laws and practices and customs to keep black people in their place. And, during the 50s and 60s, we saw the Civil Rights Movement, and the Civil Rights Act was instituted that made it unlawful for black people to be discriminated against, brown, sexes, gender. So now what do? How do you continue to control the people? Well, you legalize it, but you come up with a different name. And what we found is that what the government came up with was mass incarceration. So under the Constitution, the 13th Amendment, if you are convicted, then you use your right to vote. It's involuntary servitude. And so you have the prison industrial complex. Now, what happens when someone is convicted? Well, they lose their right to vote. They lose their right to certain education. They lose their right to governmental housing. They lose their right to certain governmental benefits. They lose their right on so many instances, they're standing in the community. And so what happens is you have legalized a certain sector of the population. So back in the 1980s, what you found is the infiltration of crack cocaine in the black communities, and you saw this publicized and this sensationalized war on drugs. Started from Nixon. You saw it with President Reagan. The government would give large amounts of monies to these local law enforcement agencies, and their job was to find people who were, possessing all manners of drugs. And so when you do that, what do? You incarcerate them. You don't rehabilitate them, you incarcerate them, you send them to jail. And so you have a whole political sect of people who are right now in custody. And what you see is most of the people that are in custody for these drug-related infractions are brown and black people. So here you are, you fast forward to modern times. When you look at the black men, most of them up until the age of 35, 50% of the population or more have been either incarcerated, been arrested, or are under some type of criminal justice system, whether they're on probation or they can't even vote, So you're taking away someone's right politically, and then again, you can't get certain benefits from the government. You can't get housing. There's certain jobs that you're unable to get into. And so what you find out is then people go back into the element per se, and they commit more crimes because they're trying to survive. And so they become reincarcerated. Then you turn around and you look at what's going on in the prison system or the prison industrial complex, and you see all of these private corporations have been set up on Wall Street, prison corporations, and they're making billions and billions of dollars off of the prison industrial complex or the prison population, which you'll see majority are black and brown. So the new F word when they get out is felony, and they become disenfranchised, but legally people can discriminate against them now. So once again, we have the Jim Crow now morphing itself into mass incarceration. But what I found is that what's not being talked about is the amount of women that are being incarcerated in prison right now. So I wanted to talk about some of five facts about women in this country when we're dealing with the prison industrial complex, and I call it the new Jane Crow. So the number of women incarcerated has grown from 800% over the past 3 decades. That is a significant amount. You have to ask the question, why? Why is there a significant amount of women being incarcerated versus significant amount of black women? And when I say women, I mean black women or brown women in particular. Now, there are over 200,000 women in prison at this dispensation of time, and about 1 million women who are on some type of probation or connected with the criminal justice system. And so again, what happens when these women are incarcerated and they come out with a felony? They can't get housing, they can't get federal aid, they can't get an education. There's certain jobs that they're limited from, because if you have a felony conviction, for example, in the nursing or home health care, or dealing with children, you're banned from being around or being able to go into that particular field. Now, the second thing is that many women enter the criminal justice system with disturbing emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. On average, it has been estimated between 85% and 90% of women who go into the criminal justice system have either been sexually abused or physically abused in a domestic violence type of scenario, whether it was with their parents or their significant other. And so what you're seeing now is a significant amount of mental health issues. And the women who go into into prison, a lot of them dealing with drug issues because they're self-medicating themselves, or they're trying to survive and take care of their family. Now, when you look at girls who enter the criminal justice system, many of the girls enter with a disturbing history of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse as well. Girls are disproportionately represented in the juvenile justice system, and black women in particular. And many of them, 59% of runaways are girls, but a lot of them are running away from an environment where they have been abused, either physically or sexually abused. And when they go into the criminal justice system, the juvenile justice system, then what you see is a continuation of the victimization of the girls. Either it's physically or sexually. And it's not just from the outside, but it's from those inside who are supposed to protect and guard them. What you find also when you're dealing with the criminal justice system and incarceration is that the pregnant women in those facilities are, even though it's against the law, even though it's unconstitutional, these practices are still occurring, and that is women who are pregnant or giving birth, they are shackled to the beds, which is just inhumane and just straight up just illegal and unconstitutional. But you find some of these state prisons who continue with these practices. And so again, you have a lot of these women who can't get prenatal care, can't get help with their reproductive systems. They come in there with all kind of sexually transmitted diseases or infections, and they can't get the health care that they need. So, again, these black women, these minority women who represent most of the prison population are becoming disenfranchised, discriminated against, and they can't get even simple health care in order to just to be healthy and continue their lives in prison. And then finally, women are being discriminated against significantly when they exit prison. Instead of trying to figure out how to integrate them back into society, money is spent putting them into prison and then isolating them from the community, when most of the time these women are dealing with mental health issues. It's been stated, I saw statistics, they said that 80% of the women have some type of mental health issues and were dealing with some type of substance abuse. So instead of criminalizing them, let's try to rehabilitate them and try to get them some counseling, because what you end up seeing is most of these are mothers who leaving their children behind in the foster care systems and the womb to prison pipeline system. So now you're creating a whole nother set of a generation to come who don't have their fathers, don't have their mothers, growing up in foster care or on the streets. And so you're dealing with a new crop of people that will go ahead on and feed the prison industrial complex. And so, this is something that we have to pay attention to. We can't ignore. We have to address. And I know Obama is doing the best that he can with reforming the prison industrial complex or prison reformation, especially for black women. But we have to be able to talk about this and share this information, because these statistics, this is a travesty to black women and to women, period, as a whole. So I just wanted to share that information. let's open our eyes and see what's really going on. And the only way to stop this, the new Jane Crow, this new prison industrial complex, is we got to set up a different type of system, because the system was never set up for us to flourish in the first place. So the Jim Crow system morphed into the Jim Crow system, and now the women are being attacked, and eventually it's the children who suffer, and what we'll see is the children being placed into the prison industrial complex. So I just want to say thank you again. And so again, when you teach a man, you teach an individual, but when you teach a woman, you teach a whole civilization, and the Black woman is the mother of civilization. Thank you.